Picture a zombie, slow, mindless, driven by instinct. Now, forget everything you know. What if a zombie could think? What if it could speak, use tools, and lay an ambush? In the world of Resident Evil, that nightmare is real, and it has a name: Las Plagas. It's not a virus. It's an ancient parasite that doesn't just turn you into a monster, it turns you into a conscious puppet. But the true story of its origin is far deeper and darker than you think. This is the complete history of Las Plagas. For years, the biological threat in Resident Evil was the T-virus, creating brain-dead walking corpses. But in a remote rural region of Spain, U.S. agent Leon S. Kennedy discovered a completely different kind of horror. An enemy that retained its intelligence, organized into a fanatical and violent society, the Ganados. To understand how a parasite could achieve what no virus ever had, we have to travel back centuries, long before the Umbrella Corporation ever existed, to the depths of a mine where an ancient power was sealed away. The story of Las Plagas doesn't begin in the 21st century, but in antiquity. This parasitic organism is believed to be millions of years old, with possible origins in West Africa, the same region where the progenitor virus would later be discovered. Centuries ago, in an isolated part of Spain, these parasites emerged from deep within the earth. The local populace that came into contact with them became infected, losing their free will and becoming the first ganados. These infected formed a pagan cult known as Los Illuminados, who worshipped the parasites and performed ritual sacrifices. Their reign of terror ended when the first Castellan of the Salazar family, a nobleman of the era, learned of the cult's activities. Seeing the immense threat they posed, he led a bloody crusade against them. The Illuminados were slaughtered, and the remaining parasites were sealed deep within a mine, over which the Salazar castle was built to eternally guard this biological tomb. For generations, the Salazar family upheld their oath to protect the world from the plague sleeping beneath their feet. But the parasites did not die. They entered a latent state, becoming desiccated and fossilized within the rock. However, their genetic material survived in the form of microscopic spores, patiently waiting for the day someone would be foolish enough to awaken them again. And that day, tragically, would come. In the early 21st century, a charismatic and mysterious cult leader named Osmond Sadler discovered ancient texts that spoke of the power of Las Plagas. He saw in them the perfect tool to fulfill his twisted vision of a perfect world, a world without free will, where all were connected and controlled by a single mind, his mind. Sadler founded a new incarnation of Los Illuminados and traveled to Spain. There he found the last descendant of the Salazar line, a young man named Ramon, only 20 years old, insecure about his small stature and consumed by a terminal illness. Sadler exploited Ramon's insecurities, convincing him that his family's mission was not to contain Las Plagas, but to release them to atone for the sins of his ancestors. Manipulated and desperate for a purpose, Ramon Salazar betrayed his family's legacy and broke the seal on the mines. He hired the local villagers to excavate the fossilized remains of the parasites. Unknowingly, as they disturbed the rocks, the workers inhaled the ancient spores. The parasites reawakened from their slumber, and a new generation of Las Plagas was born inside them, turning them into the first modern-day ganados. The entire village, and soon the castle, fell under Sadler's control. The region became his personal laboratory and the center of operations for his plan of global domination. To understand Sadler's true power, we must analyze the parasite's biology. Unlike a virus, a plaga is a complex organism. It begins as an egg, which is injected into the host's bloodstream. Once inside, it hatches, and the larva attaches to the central nervous system, growing to maturity. Once mature, the parasite takes over. The host loses their will but retains their motor skills, basic intelligence, and even speech. They become a ganado, a perfect puppet that follows the orders of a superior being. The parasites communicate with each other using high-frequency sound waves, inaudible to humans, creating a hive mind that allows them to coordinate complex attacks. But not all plagas are the same. The cult's research, led by a kidnapped scientist named Luis Serra, a former Umbrella researcher, resulted in different variants. First, there are the subordinate plagas. These are the most common type. When the host takes critical damage, the parasite can emerge from their body in different forms. Plaga type A, a mass of tentacles with a bone-like scythe seen mostly in the villagers. Plaga type B, a creature resembling a giant mouth that attempts to devour its prey, common among the soldiers on the island. Plaga type C, a spider-like form that can detach from the host's body and attack independently, seen in the castle's fanatics. Then there are the dominant Plagas. This is a genetically modified strain. Unlike the subordinates, a dominant Plaga fuses with its host without destroying their consciousness. It grants them superhuman strength and resilience, the ability to transform at will, and most importantly, the power to control all subordinate Plagas around them. Sadler, Mendez, Salazar, and later, Jack Krauser were all implanted with this type of Plaga. Finally, the cult's experiments created unique bows, like the terrifying Regeneradors, the massive El Gigante, and the lethal Verdugos, Salazar's personal bodyguards. We've unearthed the ancient history and the terrifying biology of Las Plagas, but the story doesn't end here. We're about to dive into how this remote cult planned to take over the world and how their creation spread far beyond Spain, connecting to events and characters that would change the world forever. If this deep dive into the lore is as fascinating to you as it is to me, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue to create content like this, and it ensures you won't miss the next chapter of the story. Sadler's master plan was simple and terrifying. He kidnapped Ashley Graham, the daughter of the President of the United States, with the intent of infecting her with a Plaga. His goal was to send her home, where the parasite would allow him to control the most powerful figures in the US, government from within, unleashing chaos and seizing control of the world's most influential nation. But Sadler didn't count on the intervention of outside agents with their own agendas. The scientist, Luis Serra, regretting his work, was trying to steal a sample of the dominant Plaga to stop the cult. The spy Ada Wong, working for a mysterious organization, was also after a sample for Umbrella's rivals. And finally, Jack Krauser, a former comrade of Leon's, was secretly working for Albert Wesker with the same objective. The isolated Spanish village had become the epicenter of a shadow war between multiple factions. Ultimately, Sadler's plan failed thanks to Leon Kennedy. However, samples of the parasite made it out of Spain. Ada Wong delivered a subordinate Plaga sample to Wesker, keeping the dominant one for her own employers. Wesker, however, managed to obtain a dominant Plaga sample from Krauser's body. This sample would end up in the hands of the pharmaceutical company Tricell, one of the successors to Umbrella's black market business. Tricell used Wesker's sample to develop new variants, the Plaga Type 2 and Type 3, which were easier to administer and produced more aggressive mutations. These new Plagas were responsible for the Majini outbreak in Kijuju, Africa years later during the events of Resident Evil 5. And so, the ancient plague of Spain was unleashed upon the modern world. No longer confined to a forgotten valley, it became a key product in the new age of global bioterrorism. A terrifying, intelligent parasite capable of creating armies that could think, plan, and obey. But one crucial question remains unanswered. How did a small, rural cult get the resources and scientific knowledge to genetically engineer such a complex parasite? How did a former researcher like Luis Serra, who once worked for the most infamous corporation on Earth, end up on their payroll? The official story is that the Umbrella Corporation was already finished when Leon arrived in Spain, but the tentacles of their research were long and their influence never truly died. To understand the full picture, you have to understand the monster that started it all, the one that built the labs, created the viruses, and whose shadow still looms over every outbreak that followed. In this next video, I talked about how Umbrella was born and how it collapsed. See you there.